What if I told you that the monster chasing you in your absolute worst nightmare isn't just a glitch in your brain?
Right.
Like, what if it isn't just some byproduct of, I don't know, eating too late or watching a scary movie before bed?
Yeah,
But what
exactly.
if it's actually a highly sophisticated, meticulously organized rescue team sent by your own subconscious?
It's a completely radical reframing of how we experience fear in our sleep
Yeah,
because, we're so accustomed to viewing nightmares as just neural misfires.
just static.
Right, random chaotic static that we just want to quickly overwrite with, like a cup of coffee the next morning.
Exactly. We just want to forget it.
But from a psychoanalytical perspective, the terror is actually the point.
The terror is the point.
Yeah, the terror is the mechanism of change.
Wow. And that is exactly what we are going to unravel today in this deep dive.
Yes.
Because when I saw the stack of sources you sent over for today, my first thought was honestly a bit of confusion.
I can imagine.
Yeah. I thought, why did you send us a dream journal?
Right.
It's a very specific, incredibly vivid account from an anonymous individual.
It is.
But then, as I dug into the second half of the material, which is this, like, profound, exhaustive, clinical, psychological analysis of that exact dream,
Mm-hmm.
I realized something.
What was that?
I realized this is precisely the answer to the questions, you've been asking us to explore regarding burnout, imposter syndrome, and psychological stagnation.
Absolutely. The clinical document you provided is just exceptional.
It really is.
What we have here is a textbook, almost cinematic illustration of the psychological journey of growing up.
Right.
And when I say growing up, I mean, I am not talking about paying taxes or getting a mortgage.
Not the literal adulting stuff.
Exactly. I am referring to the rigorous psychological process that Carl Jung termed individuation.
Okay, let's lay the groundwork there before we jump into the actual narrative of the dream itself.
Sure.
Because individuation is kind of a heavy term. I mean, I've heard it thrown around in psychology podcasts, usually in relation to, like, finding yourself. But what does it actually mean in the mechanics of a nightmare like this?
So think of individuation as the agonizing process of a human ego shedding its artificial social mask.
Shedding the mask.
Right. It is the journey where an individual is literally forced to confront the dark, repressed aspects of their personality, have to integrate them, and ultimately separate from the ultimate symbol of smothering infantile comfort.
Which we're going to talk about later, right?
Yes, which we will identify later as the Great Mother archetype.
Right.
The whole goal is to become a fully realized, independent, whole self.
Okay, but as this dream analysis painstakingly details, the mind doesn't really use gentle metaphors to force us into this gross, does it?
No, not at all. When we resist it in our waking lives, the unconscious mind resorts to terror to break through our defenses.
Man, and that's our mission today.
Yes, it is.
We're going to travel layer by layer through this specific dream alongside you.
And it's quite a journey.
It really is. The narrative starts in this bright, hyper-modern city, and then physically and psychologically descends into the terrifying depths of the mind.
Right.
Reading this, I have to say, it didn't feel like a spooky ghost story.
How did it feel?
It read like a psychological thriller, where the monster hunting the dreamer is just their own mind,
Exactly.
desperately trying to heal this massive internal fracture.
Structural fracture, yeah, between who they pretend to be and who they actually are.
Right.
To understand how the unconscious mind forces this confrontation, we have to examine the baseline first.
Okay, where do we start?
We have to start exactly where the dream begins, on the surface of consciousness.
All right, let's set the scene for you.
Let's do it.
The dream narrative kicks off in what the analysis calls the conscious realm, or the domain of the persona.
Right.
The dreamer is out sightseeing in a modern, bustling city with their relatives. They are walking around this specific tourist spot where there's a bridge, and people are walking underneath a highly artistic, vibrant, rainbow-colored train that is passing overhead.
So we immediately have to pause at the symbolism of the train here.
Yeah, let's break that down.
In clinical dream interpretation, mechanical transport, and trains in particular, they almost universally represent one's life trajectory.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. A train has momentum. It operates on a set track. It adheres to a schedule, and it carries passengers forward into the future.
But the crucial detail here, and this stuck out to me, is that the dreamer is not on the train.
No, they are not.
They are underneath it, just watching it go by.
And that spatial relationship is everything.
Is it?
Yes. To observe the train of life objectively from below signifies a really deep subconscious frustration.
Wow.
The dreamer is experiencing intense impatience and anxiety about their own future.
Like they're stuck.
Exactly. They feel entirely left behind, totally disconnected from the forward momentum that society expects, and that, frankly, everyone else seems to be effortlessly experiencing.
Man. And it gets even more specific, too.
It does.
As the dreamer looks up at this rainbow train, they mutter aloud, entirely to themselves, that it looks like an elegant monument by Yusaku Maezawa.
Right.
Now, just for some cultural context for you, Maezawa is a highly visible Japanese billionaire.
Yes.
He's an entrepreneur, an art collector who literally bought a Basquiat painting for over $100 million.
And went to space.
And went to space, exactly.
Okay.
So he represents the absolute pinnacle of eccentric, sophisticated, modern capitalist success.
He really does.
So the dreamer is comparing a passing train to the monument of a billionaire.
And the clinical text zeroes in on this specific piece of dialogue because it perfectly illustrates the concept of the persona.
Okay, unpack the persona for us.
The persona, in Jungian terms, is basically the social mask we curate.
Our fake selves, kinda.
Right. It is the character we perform for society to gain approval and, avoid rejection.
Yeah.
By casually dropping a reference to high-end art and a famous billionaire, the dreamer is attempting to project this aura of sophisticated intellectual superiority.
Even though nobody's actually listening to them.
Precisely. They're just talking to themselves.
Yeah.
The analysis points out that this muttering reveals a very fragile vanity.
A fragile vanity. I like that phrase.
It is a desperate bid for social validation. The dreamer wants to be perceived as someone who appreciates the finer things,
Right.
Someone who operates above the mundane reality of just being a regular person standing on a regular street.
I think we really have to bridge this to how common this feeling is.
Oh, it's incredibly common.
It's the exact psychological mechanism of scrolling through social media.
Yes. Perfect analogy.
You, listening to this, have probably felt this. You are looking at everyone else's colorful trains moving forward.
Right. They're promotions. They're perfect vacations.
Exactly. They're engagements.
Mm-hmm.
And you are standing down below, maybe curating a post or leaving a comment that makes you sound incredibly put together and intellectually detached.
Oh, yeah.
But in reality, you feel completely isolated from the actual passengers on those trains.
That modern analogy perfectly captures the dissonance at play here.
Yeah.
You curate a persona to mask the isolation, but then, ironically, the curation itself becomes isolating.
Wow, that's deep.
Notice the physical reality of the dream's opening. The dreamer is surrounded by their blood relatives,
Right.
yet they cannot engage in the group's conversation. They are literally just talking to themselves.
The source text identifies this as a symptom of severe relational fatigue, right?
Yes, absolutely. Relational fatigue.
Okay.
The conscious ego is utterly exhausted. I mean, maintaining a sophisticated intellectual facade while feeling entirely unseen and disconnected,
It takes work.
it requires a massive amount of psychological energy. The dreamer is running on empty.
Okay, so the conscious mind is exhausted from holding up this persona.
Right.
But the brain can't sustain that level of dissonance forever, can it?
No, it really can't.
When the conscious mind reaches its breaking point, what physiological or psychological mechanism takes over to force a reset?
Wow.
Like, how do we get from this feeling of social alienation to the descent into the actual nightmare?
So when the persona becomes too heavy and the conscious world no longer provides any emotional nourishment, the psyche basically initiates a forced withdrawal.
A forced withdrawal.
Yeah. If you cannot function on the surface, gravity takes over.
Oh, wow.
The mind drags you downward into the personal unconscious to confront the raw material you've been hiding from.
And the dream visualizes this transition brilliantly.
It really does.
The wide, bustling modern tourist streets suddenly narrow.
Right.
The bright scenery just vanishes, and the dreamer finds themselves walking beside a dirty ditch. Essentially an open sewage river flowing through the town.
Very visceral imagery.
It is. And they are forced to follow this ditch down a literal slope, descending away from the sunlight into this subterranean world.
The spatial movement here is critical.
How so?
In the architecture of dreams, moving downward almost always signifies a journey out of waking consciousness and into the unconscious.
Oh.
And the choice of a sewer, this dirty, foul-smelling ditch, is a highly potent symbol.
It's incredibly visceral, like you said.
Oh,
But why a sewer?
well, think about it.
Like, why not a staircase or a mysterious cave?
Think about the actual function of a sewer in a city's infrastructure.
Okay.
It is the designated channel for waste.
Right.
It is where we flush away the things we refuse to look at, the things that are unpalatable on the surface.
Wow.
Psychologically, the clinical analysis interprets this ditch as a manifestation of profound emotional blockage.
Emotional blockage.
Yes, it represents repressed stress, unexpressed anger, and the toxic buildup of interpersonal stagnation.
Jeez.
All the negative emotions and failed communications from the surface world that the dreamer tried to ignore, they've all just drained down into this space.
So the dreamer is literally being forced to walk alongside their own mental waste.
They are. However, the analysis suggests an interesting paradox here.
What's that?
The descent isn't entirely an abduction, There is a part of the mind that actually desires this retreat.
Really? They want to be in the sewer.
Well, the sheer exhaustion of maintaining the social mask makes the isolation of the underground seem kind of appealing.
Ah, I see.
It is an escape from societal pressure.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because when they get to the bottom of this slope, the environment changes again, and it doesn't look like a torture chamber.
No, it doesn't.
They see people lined up at doors complaining about the wait, almost like they're trying to get into an exclusive club or something.
Oh, boy.
The dreamer navigates through this and arrives at a setting that looks exactly like a junior high school from the Showa era,
Yes.
which, for you listening, is roughly the mid to late 20th century in Japan.
Exactly.
Suddenly, the dreamer is surrounded by classmates, people whose names they don't even remember.
Yeah.
And they are passionately, almost tearfully, reminiscing about club activities and school memories.
So we have now fully entered the realm of the personal unconscious.
Okay.
This space is basically the repository of the individual's past complexes, their historical emotional baggage, and their childhood memories.
Right.
But the dominant psychological mechanism at play in this schoolyard scene is something called regression.
Regression, meaning the brain is actively reverting to an earlier stage of psychological development.
Yes, and it does this as a defense mechanism.
Okay.
When the demands of present adult reality become too complex or too isolating or just too painful, the psyche often initiates a strategic retreat to a past era.
Just runs backward.
Exactly. The brain seeks out a time associated with pure belonging, clear social rules, and a child's perception of omnipotence.
Wow.
For this dreamer, that era is junior high school in the Showa, period.
Right.
It's a time culturally associated with strong communal bonds and relative simplicity, especially compared to the hyper-capitalist Mazawa era on the surface.
This is a crucial point for us to unpack, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Because usually we view nostalgia as a positive experience.
We do.
It's a warm, fuzzy feeling. We listen to old music. We watch reboots of our favorite childhood shows.
Right.
But the clinical text we are looking at posits that this warm blanket of nostalgia is actually a psychological trap.
It is a profound trap. We really have to look at the neuroscience of nostalgia here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Nostalgia actually triggers the release of dopamine and oxytocin.
Really?
Yes. It literally acts as a chemical painkiller. It soothes the anxiety of the present.
Wow.
But when it is used chronically as an anesthetic to avoid facing reality, it becomes a prison.
That is so true.
The passionate reminiscing in the dream is a shield. It is the dreamer's way of avoiding the crushing relational fatigue of their actual life.
And the unconscious mind knows this is a trap, which leads to the inciting incident of the actual nightmare.
Exactly.
The dreamer is soaking in these warm memories, but then the narrative shifts.
Right.
The club activities are over. It's time to return to the real world above ground.
Time to go back.
But the dreamer reaches into their pocket and realizes they have lost their key.
Oh, this is a huge moment.
They had a specific key required to exit this movie-like nostalgic world, and it's just gone.
Yes.
The realization hits them. They are trapped underground.
Right.
And they have to wade back out into the dark, back along that disgusting sewage river to find where they dropped it.
The symbol of the lost key is a massive alarm bell from the psyche.
Is it?
Yes. A key represents agency. It is the tool of independence, the power to cross boundaries, to open locked doors.
Right.
And to transition between different states of being.
So losing the key means they have literally lost the ability to move forward in life.
The subconscious is forcing a realization. You are not ready to face reality.
Wow.
You cannot simply retreat into childhood memories, soothe yourself with dopamine, and then easily pop back up to the surface to resume your fake persona.
It doesn't work that way.
No. You have lost your agency because you have surrendered to regression.
That is a brutal realization.
It is.
The analysis calls it a double stagnation.
Yes.
You are stuck in a past that isn't real. And to even have a chance of regaining your agency, you have to wade backward through the emotional sewage you've been avoiding.
It is brutal, but from a therapeutic standpoint, it is entirely necessary.
Right.
The subconscious orchestrated the loss of the key. It is forcing the dreamer to do the uncomfortable work of searching the dark places.
Wow.
And it is during the search in the dark that the dream introduces one of the most misunderstood concepts in all of psychology.
Yes, the narrative takes a major turn right here.
It does.
The dreamer is wandering around the dark edges of this underground world looking for the key, and they bump into an old friend from junior high.
Right.
But the source text makes a very specific note. This friend came from a rough family environment.
Yes, very important detail.
The dreamer asks this gritty friend to wait by a door while they continue searching for the key.
Okay.
When the dreamer eventually returns to that door, the friend is waiting patiently. But he is not standing there empty-handed.
No, he isn't.
He is sitting in the driver's seat of a massive piece of heavy machinery, like a giant excavator or a steam shovel.
This scene is a brilliant visual manifestation of the Jungian concept of the shadow.
Okay, let's dig into the shadow. I feel like in pop culture, the shadow self is always portrayed as the evil twin.
Right.
People think it just means the murderous psychopathic part of your brain.
And that is a fundamental misunderstanding, and one that really limits our ability to grow.
How so?
The shadow is not inherently evil. The shadow is simply the collection of traits, impulses, and potentials that the conscious ego deems unacceptable.
Okay.
Things it finds ugly or contrary to its idealized self-image. Because the ego rejects these traits, they are repressed and pushed down into the dark.
Right.
Everyone has a shadow.
Right, so it's contextual.
Exact.
If your persona is like the hyper-polite, always accommodating employee who never says no, your shadow probably contains your ambition, your boundary setting, and your anger.
Exactly. For our dreamer, who has spent all their energy projecting this image of a sophisticated, artistic, socially acceptable intellectual.
Right, the Mizawa stuff.
Yes. Their shadow is personified by this friend from a rough background.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
This friend represents the gritty, unpolished, aggressive traits the dreamer has completely disowned.
And then there's the machine. The symbol of the excavator is just incredible to me.
It is incredibly visceral. I mean, an excavator is not a subtle tool.
No?
It is a machine designed to tear up the earth, to break hard boundaries, to forcefully alter the landscape.
Right.
In the clinical analysis, this machine represents the dreamer's suppressed, destructive, boundary-breaking aggression. It is an immense source of power.
But it parked.
Yes. It is parked in the dark.
It's like the dreamer possesses this massive reality-altering power, this psychological excavator.
Yeah.
But because society says anger is bad or being aggressive makes you unlikable, they've outsourced it. They handed the keys of the excavator to this gritty friend and literally told him, hey, wait outside the door for me.
Right.
They were trying to micromanage their own dark side.
Micromanaging the dark side is a very astute way to describe the early stages of individuation.
Yeah.
The dreamer has not integrated this aggressive energy. They have not accepted that they are the guy on the excavator.
Right. They see it as someone else.
They view this power as something entirely separate, something to be kept on a leash, while they go about trying to find a polite way back to the surface.
Wait, if the shadow is just repressed potential, why is it considered dangerous?
Well,
Why can't we just leave it parked outside the door forever?
because psychological energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be displaced.
Oh, wow.
Jung argued that when you repress a vital part of yourself, it becomes what we call an autonomous complex.
Autonomous complex.
It begins to operate independently of your conscious will.
Oh, that's scary.
The longer you ignore the shadow, the more power it accumulates in the unconscious, until it eventually forces its way out.
Usually in destructive ways, right?
Yes, like a sudden outburst of rage or deep self-sabotage. But for the moment, the dreamer ignores this risk. They just leave the shadow behind at the door.
Which leads us to the next threshold.
It does.
The dreamer opens the door, leaving the friend and the excavator outside.
Right.
They step into a space that resembles an old movie theater with rows of red seats. But there is no exit.
No.
The only way forward is a horizontal, incredibly narrow slit in the wall.
Yes.
The dreamer has to physically contort and squeeze their body through this tight crack to get to the other side.
Pay attention to the physical sensation of squeezing through a tight, restrictive space here.
It sounds awful.
It is a profound transitional symbol. The dreamer is leaving the personal unconscious, the realm of their own childhood memories, their personal nostalgia, their individual shadow.
Right.
And they are undergoing a symbolic birth. They are being pushed into a much deeper, much older layer of the mind, the collective unconscious.
The collective unconscious. Okay, this is where the dream shifts from like a personal therapy session into a landscape of ancient mythology.
It really does.
But before we get to the goddess on the ceiling, we need to explain how the collective unconscious works.
Good idea.
Because to a lot of people, it sounds a bit mystical. Are we talking about genetic memories? Telepathy?
No, it is not mystical at all. It is biological and evolutionary.
Okay, explain that.
A good way to contrast it is to look at Sigmund Freud versus Carl Jung.
Yeah.
Freud viewed the unconscious mind largely as a basement where you lock away your personal repressed desires and traumas.
Right, the stuff you specifically went through.
Jung agreed with that, which he called the personal unconscious. But Jung argued there was a layer beneath that.
Beneath the basement.
Exactly. Think of the collective unconscious as the base operating system that every single human brain comes pre-installed with.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Your personal unconscious is just your specific search history and the files you saved. But the underlying code, the deep evolutionary architecture that dictates how humans perceive fear, motherhood, danger, and authority, that is shared across the entire species.
Wow.
This operating system is populated by archetypes, which are universal symbols and behavioral blueprints.
So because every human being for millions of years has had a mother,
Yes.
our brains have evolved a universally shared, pre-programmed concept of the mother that exists deep in our neural architecture, regardless of who our actual biological mother is.
Precisely. And the moment the dreamer squeezes through that wall into this deeper layer of the mind, they encounter one of the most powerful and terrifying archetypes in human existence.
Man. So the moment they emerge from the crack in the wall, a disembodied narration begins.
Right.
A calm voice just starts explaining the rules of this new, bizarre reality.
Just casually.
Yeah. The voice states that the entire world they are in is currently cursed.
Yeah.
And the cause of the curse is lying right above them. The dreamer looks up, and the sky, the entire ceiling of this world, is consumed by a colossal, ancient Japanese female deity.
It's an incredible image.
She's lying on her back, her body stretching across the entire horizon. The dreamer can't even see her face, just the sheer, incomprehensible, crushing scale of her.
It is an awe-inspiring and terrifying image.
Her.
It is a direct encounter with what the prominent Jungian psychoanalyst Eric Newman called the Great Mother archetype.
And the physical details of this goddess are incredibly unsettling.
They are.
From the chest of this massive deity, drops of liquid are falling. The dreamer doesn't know if it's sweat or tears,
Right.
but the drops are falling slowly toward the earth below. And the disembodied narration calmly states, "We only survive because those drops aren't hitting the earth."
This is the absolute core of the nightmare.
Really?
Yes, it is a breathtaking manifestation of the dual nature of the Great Mother.
Okay, let's explore that dual nature.
Yeah.
Because we usually think of a mother archetype as nurturing, right?
Right, of course.
The source of warmth, protection, and life.
And she is. The Great Mother is the ultimate source of life and creation.
Okay.
But archetypes are not one-dimensional. They always contain their own opposite.
Oh, wow.
The Great Mother gives life, but she is also a terrifying principle of investment that swallows everything.
Swallows everything.
She desires absolute, unbroken fusion with her children. To the Great Mother archetype, a child growing up, developing an independent ego, and separating from her is a tragedy.
Right.
Therefore, she actively, fiercely hinders independence.
The clinical analysis explicitly connects this massive deity to Japanese Shinto mythology.
Yes, specifically the story of Izanami.
Right. I think we need to tell that story to fully grasp the terror of this dream.
The parallels are undeniable and really vital to the analysis.
Yeah.
So in the Shinto creation myth, Izanagi the male and Izanami the female are the primordial couple.
Okay.
They're the deities who literally churn the ocean to create the islands of Japan. They are the ultimate creators. But the myth takes a dark turn. Izanami dies in agony while giving birth to the fire god, Kagutsuchi.
Oh, man.
She descends into Yomi, the underworld, the land of the dead.
And Izanagi, her husband, can't let her go.
Right.
Like a classic tragic hero, he journeys into the underworld to bring her back.
He does. But when he finally finds her in the darkness of Yomi, he lights a fire and sees the truth.
And it's not pretty.
No, she is no longer the beautiful mother of creation. She is a rotting corpse, swarming with maggots, transformed into a terrifying god of death.
Oh.
Izanagi is horrified and flees. Izanami, enraged by his rejection of her dark underworld state, chases him, promising to kill 1,000 of his people every single day.
She goes from being the mother of all life to a force of absolute destruction and suffocating enmeshment.
Yes. The goddess on the ceiling in the dream is this dark, underworld aspect of Izanami.
Wow.
She represents the absolute terror of the mother figure who gives life but holds the power to instantly obliterate it.
That is terrifying.
And let's look at the specific imagery of the dripping sweat or tears. The clinical text argues this represents profound infantile dependency.
Break that down for us. Why sweat or tears?
Well, think about the psychological and physical state of an infant.
Okay.
The infant is kept entirely alive by the mother. That is the positive, life-giving side.
Right.
But because of that complete reliance, the infant is also entirely at her mercy.
Oh, I see.
If she withdraws her care, or if her overwhelming, suffocating power crashes down on the infant, symbolized by those massive drops of sweat hitting the earth, the fragile ego of the infant is destroyed.
Wow.
The dreamer is not experiencing adult fear here. They are experiencing the primal, pre-verbal terror of absolute dependency.
But the text notes a fascinating emotional layer here.
It does.
Despite the sheer terror of this cosmic entity, the dreamer feels something else while looking up at her. They feel profound guilt.
Yes.
They know that the goddess is suffering. They know she is crying, and they feel a deep conviction that she needs to attain nirvana, to find peace in order for the world to actually be saved.
This guilt is the psychological linchpin of the entire struggle.
Really?
In many cultures, but particularly in Japanese culture, as highlighted by the analysis, the mother-child bond is deeply enmeshed.
Right.
There is a cultural concept called ame, which roughly translates to a desire to be passively loved, to depend on the benevolence of another, usually the mother.
Okay.
The expectation of duty, care, and emotional proximity is intense. Therefore, the natural psychological process of weaning, of an adult seeking independence and establishing a separate identity, feels like a violent act of betrayal.
It feels like you are abandoning the mother.
Exactly. The dreamer's ego wants to grow. It wants to find the key and move forward.
Right.
But the unconscious throws up this monumental image of the great mother suffering because of that very growth. Seeking independence feels like you are killing the mother's purpose.
That is so incredibly poignant.
It really is.
I mean, think about what this means for you, the listener, if you've ever struggled with family boundaries.
Yeah.
The curse on this dream world isn't some evil magic cast by a villain. The curse is the sheer pain of a mother who is unable to let go, and a child who is utterly terrified of breaking her heart in order to become their own person.
Beautifully said.
It's a curse born of love and dependency that has overstayed its welcome and become toxic.
It is a beautifully tragic framing. The ego is paralyzed. The desire for growth is locked in a stalemate with the monumental guilt of separation.
So the dreamer is standing there, physically paralyzed by fear and guilt, trapped under this weeping, world-ending goddess.
Right.
They cannot handle the emotional weight, so they flee.
They run.
They run away from this profound mythological terror, sprinting down a dark forest path toward what looks like a shrine.
Yes.
But instead of finding spiritual salvation or a moment of peace at this shrine, they are violently slapped in the face by the most out-of-place corporate reality check imaginable.
This transition is one of the most fascinating and bizarre moments in the entire dream narrative.
It's so jarring.
It really is.
It's nighttime. They are deep in the woods near this ancient sacred shrine. And suddenly, there is a puzzle venue set up in the dirt.
Right.
There are computers on tables. And a faceless authority figure verbally gives the dreamer a highly complex, multi-layered Excel spreadsheet problem to solve.
An Excel spreadsheet problem in a sacred ancient forest beneath a weeping goddess.
Exactly. It makes no logical sense.
No.
The dreamer is completely overwhelmed. They have absolutely no idea how to solve this spreadsheet logic puzzle.
Of course not.
But instead of asking for help or admitting they don't know, they lie.
They lie.
They just blurt out, "I did it," just to get past the checkpoint and escape the suffocating pressure of the moment.
We have to pause and rigorously analyze this clash of worlds because it represents massive internal psychological conflict.
Let's do it.
The shrine, the deep forest, the overarching goddess, these elements all represent the primordial maternal space. It is the realm of subjectivity, deep emotion, intuition, and what the ancient Greeks called pathos.
And the Excel test.
The Excel test represents the exact opposite. It represents paternal order, or logo.
All logos.
Yes, it is the symbol of modern societal rules, unyielding logic, objective evaluation, and rigid corporate structures. It is the world of grids, formulas, and right or wrong answers.
It's the world of the passing train from the very beginning of the dream, the Mizawa monument.
The clinical literature actually supports that direct connection.
Wow.
The dreamer has fled the overwhelming, chaotic emotion of the maternal unconscious, only to crash headfirst into the rigid, unforgiving demands of the paternal societal world.
Yeah.
And how does their fragile ego handle this impossible pressure? They lie.
I did it. Why lie? Why not just say, I don't know how to do this?
Because admitting incompetence when your persona is already incredibly fragile feels like social death.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This lie reveals a deep-seated inferiority complex and a massive case of imposter syndrome. The dreamer feels entirely inadequate when faced with the objective logic of society. They deploy a fake facade, a verbal persona, just to survive the immediate expectation.
Right.
But as the analyst notes, this kind of lying only breeds a deeper sense of isolation. You survive the moment, but internally you carry the heavy knowledge that you are a fraud.
And the dream architecture does not let them get away with the fraud.
No, it doesn't.
Because right after they lie, they reach the final checkpoint of this weird puzzle venue.
Right.
There's a bullet train waiting in the dark. It is the train back to the real world, back to conscious reality.
Yes.
Everyone else who successfully solved the puzzle is boarding the train. But before you can get on, you have to show your work.
The proof.
The dreamer looks down at the answer they have produced. And their answer to this complex Excel problem consists entirely of emoji-like patterns.
Emojis.
Emojis, little pictures, feelings, abstract symbols.
Right.
Meanwhile, the correct answer, the one everyone else is holding, is a string of rigid, highly complex kanji characters. Because the dreamer's answer is a chaotic mess of emojis, instead of the structured kanji, they're denied boarding.
They can't get on.
The bullet train speeds away, and the dreamer is left entirely behind in the dark forest.
The symbolic dichotomy here is incredibly rich.
Let's unpack it.
Let's look at the contrast between kanji and emojis. Kanji characters, in the context of this dream, represent rigid societal norms, objective logic, tradition, and strict structure.
Right.
Kanji requires precise stroke order. There is a right way and a wrong way to write it. It is the language of the Excel spreadsheet. It is the language of objective reality.
And the emoji.
The emoji represents the dreamer's true, unvarnished inner state.
Oh, wow.
It is subjective, deeply emotional, intuitive, and inherently messy. It is pathos.
Right.
The tragedy here is that the dreamer is frantically trying to pass a logos test using pathos tools.
I want to speak directly to the listener here because this is the core of modern burnout.
It absolutely is.
Have you ever tried to force your messy, emotional emoji self into a rigid Excel spreadsheet life? How many times have you sat in a meeting or navigated a relationship feeling like you are operating in chaotic emojis while everyone else around you is perfectly formatted, perfectly structured in kanji?
It's exhausting.
Of course you fail the test.
It is the defining anxiety of the modern worker. But here is where the clinical analysis provides a profound, counterintuitive reframe.
Okay, lay it on us.
The conscious mind of the dreamer feels this failure as a crushing defeat. They have been rejected. They have been left behind by the bullet train of society.
Right.
But clinically, failing a test in a dream is often viewed as a reverse dream. It is actually a good omen.
Wait, hold on. Failing the test is a good thing.
Yes.
In the real world, failing the corporate Excel test means you don't get the promotion or you can't pay your rent.
True.
How can a clinical psychologist advise someone that failing a societal standard is a good omen? Isn't that just romanticizing failure to make the patient feel better?
That is a very fair critique, and we have to be careful not to view this as an ideological stance against work or society. The clinical analysis isn't saying that corporate structures or societal expectations are inherently evil.
Okay.
It is arguing that for this specific dreamer, continuing to conform to these rigid logo structures is causing profound psychological damage.
Oh, yes.
Think about what getting on that bullet train would actually mean.
Right, going back up.
It would mean returning to the superficial, exhausting persona from the beginning of the dream.
The Muzawa Monument again?
Yes.
Oof.
It would mean going back to staring at the Mazawa Monument, projecting a fake intellect, and feeling entirely isolated from your own family.
Right.
Being left behind by the train means the unconscious is finally stepping in and saying, no, it is not the right time for you to force this artificial, unsustainable growth.
The mind is literally sabotaging their commute back to a fake life.
Exactly. The dream is begging the dreamer to stop rushing to meet society's timeline. It is forcing a psychological timeout.
Wow.
The failure is the psyche's way of demanding rest and authenticity. You cannot take your raw, emotional emoji self onto the structured kanji train.
You just can't.
You have to stay behind in the dark and figure out who you actually are.
Okay, I see the nuance there. The failure forces the reckoning.
Right.
But as beautiful and therapeutic as taking a time out to find yourself sounds in a clinical office, the physical reality of the dream in that moment is sheer terror.
Oh, absolute terror.
The unconscious isn't done with him yet. The bullet train is gone. The dreamer is left completely alone in this dark, creepy shrine in the middle of the woods at night.
Yes.
And they have to face the direct consequence of what they did earlier in the dream.
Yes. They have to face what they left parked outside the door.
The shadow.
The shadow.
The dreamer is hiding in the bushes near the shrine. They can hear the giant Great Mother Goddess sobbing loudly in the distance, her voice echoing through the sky, creating an incredibly eerie, oppressive atmosphere.
Right.
And suddenly, sweeping through the trees, they see a light. It's the gritty friend from junior high. The shadow.
He's back!
He is riding his massive excavator through the dark woods, wielding a blindingly bright flashlight, sweeping the beam back and forth, actively searching for anyone left behind by the train.
The return of the repressed.
And the dreamer realizes something horrifying. The shadow is no longer just waiting patiently outside a door.
No.
The dreamer senses a shift in allegiance. The shadow has now been employed by the sobbing goddess.
Yes.
He's working for the great mother of all seas, and his explicit mission is to find the dreamer and sacrifice them to her.
This is the terrifying, inevitable consequence of repressing your own strength.
Man.
Let's connect the psychological dots here. Earlier, the dreamer refused to integrate their aggressive, boundary-breaking energy, the excavator.
Right, they left it outside.
They deemed it unacceptable and left it in the dark. But as we discussed, psychic energy does not sit idle.
It goes somewhere.
Because the ego refused to claim that power, it was absorbed by the most massive gravitational force in the unconscious, the Great Mother archetype.
So because you refuse to use your own strength to grow up and break boundaries, your own strength is now being weaponized by the mother archetype to drag you backward into the womb.
It is a devastating feedback loop. The dreamer's own suppressed power has turned against them.
Wow.
It is now actively serving the forces of regression and enmeshment. And let's look at the specific tool the shadow is using alongside the excavator, the flashlight.
Right, the text describes the beam as blindingly bright.
In the symbology of the unconscious, a bright light in the darkness almost always represents consciousness or awareness.
Oh, that makes sense.
The shadow is shining the piercing light of truth into the dark bushes. It is forcing the dreamer's fragile ego to finally look at the reality of their repressed self.
But the ego fights back, using the only tools it knows.
Right.
When the flashlight beam sweeps near them, the dreamer doubles down on their old habits. They try to play a role.
Yes.
The narrative states the dreamer intentionally contorts their body to look like a helpless, homeless person.
Just curling up.
They curl up in the dirt and put on this pathetic, desperate act, crying out weakly, "I'm here, please help me." They play the ultimate helpless victim.
A desperate, regressive final defense mechanism.
Yeah.
The logic of the panicked ego is, if I make myself completely helpless and pathetic, maybe the aggressive force will take pity on me.
Right.
Maybe the Great Mother will just coddle me instead of destroying me. It is a surrender of all agency.
But the shadow does not care.
No, it doesn't.
The friend on the excavator shines the blinding flashlight right in the dreamer's face, exposing the lie.
Yeah.
And instead of pity, the shadow attacks.
Yes.
But he doesn't crush them with the mechanical arm of the excavator. He attacks psychologically.
He strikes the ego precisely at its weakest structural points.
Yes. The gritty friend laughs this cruel, mocking laugh and yells down at the dreamer.
Right.
He says, "Of course you're still here. You couldn't even solve that simple Excel problem. And you don't even respect the goddess. Someone as stupid and disrespectful as you could never escape this world. You belong back in the cursed world.
The shadow is weaponizing the dreamer's two deepest, most paralyzing insecurities.
It's brutal.
First, the failure at the Excel test. This represents their total social inferiority, their imposter syndrome, their inability to function in the Logos world.
Right.
Second, the accusation of disrespecting the goddess. This directly targets that immense, suffocating guilt over seeking independence, the cultural guilt of breaking a melee and leaving the mother behind.
Wow.
The shadow is essentially screaming, "You are a failure in society and you are a bad child. You are nothing."
It is the absolute total breakdown of all psychological defenses.
But everything is gone.
The sophisticated persona from the city is gone. The nostalgic regression to junior high failed. The lie at the puzzle venue failed. Playing the helpless victim failed.
Yes.
The dreamer is cornered in the dirt, blinded by the light of truth, being screamed at by their own unintegrated dark side.
This is the crucible. This is the critical juncture of individuation.
The turning point.
The conscious ego is facing total annihilation. At this moment, it has two choices. It will either completely collapse under the weight of its own shame and be swallowed by the Great Mother, returning to a state of permanent psychological infantilism, or the ego must find a completely new, unprecedented way to survive.
And what happens next is honestly one of the most cinematic, fist-pumping moments I have ever read in a clinical case study.
It really is spectacular.
Pushed to the absolute psychological limit, with nowhere left to hide and no masks left to wear, the dreamer drops the homeless victim act.
They drop it completely.
They stop fake crying, they stand up in the dirt, they clench their teeth, stare directly into that blinding sashlight, and they say to the shadow, "Bring it on. Kakate koyo."
A monumental shift in psychic energy.
And the very moment they speak those words, the spell is broken.
Yes.
They wake up, they snap awake in their real bed, in reality,
Yeah.
actually speaking those words aloud to the empty room. Bring it on. I was blown away by this climax. It's like watching a movie where the hero has been beaten down for 2 hours, hiding behind a cracked shield, and they finally drop the shield and realize they're the weapon.
That's a great way to put it.
Playing the victim didn't work, so they finally integrated the excavator.
That is precisely what occurred. In clinical terms, this moment of breakthrough is defined as identification with the aggressor.
Explain that, because usually identification with the aggressor sounds like a negative thing, like Stockholm Syndrome or something.
In trauma psychology, it often is a maladaptive response, where a victim takes on the traits of their abuser in a desperate bid to feel safe.
Right.
But in the context of Jungian dream work and the integration of the shadow, it is a profoundly positive, necessary turning point.
Oh, interesting.
The ego finally realizes that the aggressive, boundary-breaking energy of the shadow is not the enemy. It is the exact psychological tool required for survival. By standing up and challenging the shadow, by saying, "Bring it on," the dreamer stops being the passive, guilty victim of the Great Mother. They claim the raw energy of the excavator for themselves.
They stop outsourcing their power to the guy outside the door.
They refuse to be swallowed by the maternal chaos. And the physiological reality of the ending, the fact that they spoke the words into the real world as they woke up, is crucial.
Oh, it is, yeah.
It signifies that this wasn't just an abstract dream resolution, it was a visceral psychological rebirth. They bridged the gap between the deepest layers of the unconscious and their waking reality.
Wow.
In the context of the mythology we explored earlier, they successfully mirrored Izanagi.
Right.
They descended into the underworld, faced the rotting terror of enmeshment, reclaimed their fighting spirit, and crossed back into the land of the living.
What an unbelievable journey. When you lay it out like this, the architecture of the mind is just staggering.
It really is.
From the fragile vanity over a colorful train to wading through the toxic sewage of nostalgia, facing the cosmic terror of the smothering Great Mother, failing the rigid Excel test of modern society, and finally, being cornered by your own worst nightmare.
Right.
Only to realize that nightmare is holding the keys to your own strength.
It is a textbook, perfectly structured journey of the human soul striving for wholeness.
It's beautiful.
But the clinical analysis we reviewed doesn't just leave it there as a fascinating piece of internal theater. It offers very specific practical advice for the dreamer, and by extension, anyone navigating a similar struggle.
Right. We need to ground this.
Yeah.
What is the final takeaway from the source text? How does the analyst suggest the dreamer integrate this experience into their waking life?
The analyst concludes that this dreamer possesses immense active energy and deep, intuitive sensitivity.
Okay.
But they have been squandering that vital energy by trying to contort themselves into boxes they fundamentally do not belong in.
Yeah.
The recommendation is stark and clear. You must stop lying to fit into kanji boxes. You must accept your imperfect, messy, emotional emoji self.
Because if you accept the emoji self, you don't have to fear the shadow.
That is the core truth of individuation.
Wow.
If you accept who you truly are, you integrate the shadow's strength. You stop micromanaging it.
Right.
And when you do that, that terrifying flashlight wielded by the excavator doesn't blind you anymore. It ceases to be an interrogation light exposing your frauds, and instead becomes a guiding light, illuminating your actual, authentic path forward.
Stop lying to fit into kanji boxes. That concept is going to stick with me for a long time.
Me too.
You know, we spend so much of our waking lives trying to pass the Excel tests of society.
We really do.
We meticulously curate our personas. We memorize the formulas of how we are supposed to act, how we are supposed to succeed, and we live in absolute terror of failing.
Constant terror.
We are terrified of being denied boarding and left behind by the bullet train of progress.
It is, without a doubt, the defining anxiety of the modern era. The friction between who we are and who we are told to be.
But look at the mechanics of what we just explored in this dream.
Yeah.
It was only by failing the test, it was only by being left behind in the dark and getting violently cornered by their own repressed anger and shame that this individual finally found the courage to stand up and claim their true power.
Exactly.
They had to lose the fake game to finally start playing the real one.
That's beautifully put.
So I want to leave you, the listener, with a thought to mull over today as you go back to your spreadsheets, your social media feeds, and your colorful trains.
Listen closely.
Think about your own life. What test are you currently terrified of failing? What is the societal or relational standard you are twisting yourself into knots trying to meet?
Right.
And what if failing it? What if being left behind by that specific train isn't a disaster, but is exactly the dark, quiet space your mind needs to finally wake you up?
A vital question for all of us to answer.
Embrace your emoji self. Face your flashlights. We'll see you next time.